Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FinTech Token Bytes podcast. With me is a returning guest, one of the very few who's probably now the third time.
Oh my goodness, you're
Probably. I know, I'm just saying, I'm glad to have you, but you're probably the first person to be on my podcast for the third time. And It's been a pleasure speaking with you on all those topics, and we often speak on quite a few things. This is Theodora Lau, Unconventional Ventures, advisor to many leading firms, tech, financial services, top 20 fintech leaders according to the American Bankers Association, always in the top 10 ranked fintech influencers and thought leaders globally, and many, many things, and also a Hong Konger at heart and core, and born here as well, so I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still learning from you though. Yeah? That's the funny thing.
I go back home in Bangalore and learn, and some of the visitors have been there more often than me in the last 15 years. But Theo, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
How's your trip been so far?
Ooh, amazing. I there's the thing, like once you're a Hong Konger, you're always a Hong Konger. So every time you come back, I feel like I'm home. And I love the energy, I love the people, I love the passion, I love the food. It's my happy place.
It's a lot of people's happy place. I often say that even when people moved out of Hong Kong a few years back over COVID and other reasons, very few, if any, were like, hey, I'm fed up of this place. It's like circumstantial. I need to know. I miss Hong Kong so much. It's got that soul. Mm-hmm. It's got a character. It evolves. It's got that resilience, and people are talking about, oh, Hong Kong's bounced back, and it's done that so many times. Not to be taken for granted, but like that element of let's move on is inherently very Hong Konger, right? Mm-hmm. Let's get on. More than let's move on, let's get on with it. In every phase of life, throughout your life, to a certain extent, I feel sometimes too much for those who are in their bright silver age, but that keeps them active. They're moving, exercising, everything else, and that's the city. Mm-hmm. Always reinventing itself.
Resilience,
right? And the Resilience podcast was one that a friend used to run. We were discussing over lunch about all that's changed and what's happening, and I guess top of all of our minds is artificial intelligence, right?
I thought we were going to go for like the whole podcast without saying the word.
I mean, we can call it IE or something else, and call it ET or another name, and go with your favorite movie character in the last R2. 30 years, the Sentinel Man, R2D2, anybody you like. But at the end of it, it's been fascinating. You've been forgive me if I failed to mention, best-selling author of multiple books on financial services, fintech, and AI. And her last book was specifically looking at AI, released in both English and in Chinese as well. And I saw it in here in the stores as well. So it's fascinating. So you've been looking at it for quite some time. AI isn't necessarily something that's new to us, to financial services and everything else, but it's just been, I'm saying, nuts at the pace at which it's moved in the last 2.5 years, and I don't even know where to begin. Maybe we'll start with it. How have you seen this? Let's forget financial services for a moment, but someone who's a tech aficionado and practitioner and been in tech most of your career, if not all of it, how are you seeing this last 2.5 years or 3 years, let's give them another 6 months, in terms of Gen AI and all the advances in AI?
Yeah, it's, I would sum it up with one word, it's exhausting. Exhausting not in a bad sense, but exhausting as in I can't keep up with it. I don't know anyone who can. And as you say, AI is not new. It's been around for quite a while, since the 1940s. And we've been using it for quite a while, but not in the extent that we have been using it, and it has not changed as quickly as it has been for the last 2 years. And I think that's the exhausting part, is one day you thought okay, I'm kind of caught up with what's going on. Next thing you know, you have something else, right? So when I first started writing my last book, Banking on AI, I was pretty much looking at it from a risk management perspective. Is fairly new with generative AI. Before the book even came out, we were already talking about agents. We were talking about agentic future.
Yeah.
And by the time the book came out, people were talking about agentic commerce. It's like, okay, so what's next, right? And the what's next question is the mind-boggling thing, because let's look at how everyday consumers are using AI for right now. It is a tool that is readily available.
Correct.
To everyone.
It is,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so it can come in different flavors and different bots and companies, if you will. But everyone has had a chance to play with it, and now the genie is out of the box. And what's next?
I don't know. It's never going to go back into the lamp, right? All of it is out, and it's just now cloning itself in various forms. Interestingly, you mentioned about how it's being used by everyone. And as you also stated this, and we know this, for most of the enterprise applications of AI, the big name LLMs are having financial services as one of the main applications where they want to develop, be it Anthropic or Google or Copilot and others in various forms, right? OpenAI for quite some time has been looking at finance, but I guess a few months ago when Anthropic released their list of AI tools for financial services, in particular investment banking tools, or some of these were fundamental tools, but you can see how it was starting to rewire and the focus therein. And this is where it gets funny. And just before we were recording, we were talking about the conversation around financial advice, right? And if you can see two ways. One is democratizing access to various, let's say, intelligence, advice, call it what you will, which the general public did not have before, or somebody who's middle class did not necessarily have at scale on demand, right? Now you have something that gives you decently intelligent inputs, which you earlier may have had to pay for, or frankly felt you were not suitable for. That's the democratization part of it. On the other side is the concern that we both have, which is the lack of guardrails against this is not financial advice, or if it is, who's liable. It's a bit like when people are doing investments and they say, oh, this is an amazing thing for people, and people get in, and then when they get burnt, it's like, who's now going to protect you, like the ICO story. So how do you see this conversation from your view?
It's precisely what you say, right? So one of the figures that's always haunts me in some sense is there's a study from JD Power in the last few months now that they talk about, when we say consumers use AI for financial advice, what are we talking about, right? And so half year ago, that figure stood at 51% of American consumers have used AI for financial advice in the last 3 months. Just recently, that figure has been updated to 53%.
Wow.
Okay, and think about, probably by next year, it will be even higher.
Correct.
And then the question comes to precisely what you say. When they go to Gemini, when they go to Claude, when they go to Grok, any of these LLMs, and they also question, how do these LLMs surface the answers? That's first question number one. And as it turned out, a lot of these data sources are coming from Reddit.
Yeah.
And they come from perhaps some of the big bank websites. And so the question becomes, or YouTube, right? Or any sources, which is very different than in the old days. When you go look for a question, you go to Trusted Friends, you go to the bank advisor.
Correct.
Right? And so when that changes, and the second question becomes, who can actually influence the output of these LLMs? And if these consumers are actually trusting what they're seeing, is that even correct? And how do we guide them towards a path that will not harm them? And there's a whole lot of question I don't know if we are prepared to answer as an industry, but the genie's out of the bottle.
So the example we were discussing in India, you're seeing these ads during some of the major sports tournaments where, and I stand to be correct, I think it's Gemini, but it could be OpenAI, where it's the two air stewardesses speaking to each other about getting a bonus, and then, hey, what should we do? Or one says, oh, let's put money in gold. The other one's like, yeah, that's been done. What else can we do? Or let me ask the AI, and the AI says, oh yeah, here are your options. Still okay, because you go online and you search, this is something you find, as some of the regulators say, this is okay, it's available to everybody, this is not unique advice. You're saying, okay, you can maybe do a mutual funds, you can do systematically investment plans, or you go to a bank, whatever. That's just giving you the options, right? But it's not specifying what your investment plan needs to be. This is where the advice of investment kicks in. And then it says, the AI and the ad says, do you want me to prepare something for you? Right? And there wasn't any disclaimer, nothing in the ad afterwards saying, refer to blah, blah, blah. Recently, I was doing some search on, I think, prices of Bitcoin or something else. And then the AI element in Gemini just gave the updates, and then at the bottom it says, this is not investment advice, right? Do your own research. That's not enough anyway from a regulatory perspective. But what that tells you is, A, the LLMs now know that this is heading towards that, and secondly is the protection it's going to be very challenging to argue that this is not investment advice when it is saying, hey, here's my advice for what you need to do. It's helpful, it's very useful, but there is so much underlying on AI hallucinating still is, and Gen AI is still a probabilistic tool largely, and I don't claim to be an AI expert, I'm not, but my understanding is it's largely a probabilistic element. So it's looking at all the data the model has been trained on, and what, as you said, Reddit, if it's Gemini, it has access to Google's data. A couple of other LLMs have said that they had access to LLM. Reddit is one main, but newspapers, etc. And then it becomes, okay, you have this knowledge, and now it's suggesting, but it makes up stuff as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't have the context,
It doesn't have the context. It's very generic. It doesn't know your history, your background, and that's why you have specialist investment advisors. Some may say, hey, at least people are getting something. I hear you, right? And that was a similar story around ICOs and others, that, hey, people can invest in crypto and they're getting these big returns, but who protects you when something goes away? You don't have the regulatory protection necessarily, or all the elements, the liability questions, and that starts putting things into a trickier piece. And just closing the loop, I feel one of the other things that will happen is, if you're a smart quant fund, you figure out 5 LLMs and you say, this is what typically they answer, this is what they're suggesting, search the 10 most recommended stock prices, right? Stocks, right? And the prices around it. Follow the trail, this is what most people are buying, you front run that, or you purchase more of it, or you go against it because people don't know when to exit. So you kind of start getting a sense of where people are going. And that could lead to not necessarily market manipulation, but impacting the trader on the street.
It's signals, right? Yeah. You're looking for the signals. And I think that speaks to what's next, right? The question around what's next. And we see, for example, OpenAI partnering with Plaid, because they want to be part of where the transactions are going. Yeah. You see BBVA partnering with OpenAI, and they said, well, if consumers are going to be using these tools, let us partner with these tools as part of the game. Yeah. So I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. People know that there's usefulness to the tech tool, but we can't quite figure out what we can do with it to the extent that we can protect the bank and protect the consumers at the same time. Because one of the biggest challenges too is eMarketer has another study they call the AI Visibility Index.
Yes. Yeah.
And they look at, if consumers are indeed going to these tools and say, hey, find me the best credit card for my particular situation, and then they see the responses coming out, then the question is, who are these companies in these responses? And if you're a credit card company, let's say Capital One, can you influence the outcome so that you surface? And if you don't, are you still relevant?
It's the same, the questions around ranking, ads, search rankings, which Google's had to deal with in many jurisdictions. And so this was the court case in Hangzhou recently. Gemini threw this up, so I give the AI the credit on this. We were looking up, and there was a ruling that talks about how using AI does not elevate a company's right or responsibility towards ensuring that there's protection for consumers, employees, but also about competition, right? And so when you talk about anti-competition, this becomes another conversation. Like, is the use of AI going to skew things to few companies who are then dominating in not necessarily monopolies, but duopolies and or what's the right term for it? My age is catching up. Cartels, right? Maybe competing with each other, but essentially AI cartels, like 5 companies control everything, and that's the viewpoint that comes in and starts impacting globally.
That's how it feels like right now.
It is, and the other element. This is not a political conversation, but we'll start seeing with geopolitics and restrictions on the use of certain models or certain companies' models outside of that country. Most countries are now going to be like, we need that sovereign
data.
LLM to serve our sovereign data and keep this information in-house.
I think it's a very valid risk question, right? It is a question that I've started seeing surfacing in Europe as well since last year, is, how does a particular country create safeguards for their data, making sure that it doesn't get exploited from a different government, if you will, and how do they make sure they have access to the tools? Those are very, very valid questions, and it's not just on AI, it's on everything else.
Health data, right? And I mean, a lot of people, I know friends who are putting their lab results on OpenAI, free version, and asking it to provide inputs. It's very useful for them, even if they could go to a doctor and get the same input. It just helped them prepare to talk to the doctor. But I was like, okay, you now just put your private information on a database. It's not even the premium version, which retains your data within your control. That can be hundreds and millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people sharing all this information, and then it goes out, right? It could be with somebody else, it could be enterprises, and I'm building on this, which it was one of the things that quite frankly surprised me, that you had a CEO of one of the biggest tech companies who was investing tens of billions of dollars in AI talk about, which was Satya Nadella earlier this year. I think it was at Davos, but I stand to be correct, but I'm almost certain it was at Davos, where he was talking about the enterprise value leakage through AI, which is when you're putting in, a lot of people are using a Gen AI tool without the data controls, a lot of your intelligence, your knowledge of the enterprise is now leaking to these models, and the companies that own them. They may not farm it actively, but there is now an opportunity
training someone.
Training, right? And they could then become that enterprise software, which is what probably we are seeing in certain instances. Like, how is Claude being or Anthropic building so many very effective tools? One is the strength of the model, of course, but the other is the knowledge base that it's being fed into, and that is the enterprise leakage. And so I was like very surprised Microsoft is talking about it, but the fact that he chose to speak on a public forum about it when they had already invested like 20-30 billion in OpenAI was fascinating, and it was like a big warning, and I didn't see too many people follow up on it, but it was like, this is pretty massive and it's not being given attention, is the access to enterprise intelligence, enterprise data that these big 4-5 models are getting.
Yeah, it's I think that it is going to spell trouble in quite a few ways. Think about all the smaller companies right in the middle that all of these SMBs are relying on, because they don't want to go to a big company, and so they go to this middle tier companies for services. And now imagine they can just do that with their subscription to one of the big frontier AI companies. What's going to happen to these guys in the middle?
And then it starts becoming the question of access again. Are you allowed local access? Are we not? How are you going to do it? So bit messy, but I do feel we do have we're speaking about the doom and gloom because it is important in terms of risks and guardrails, and but on the other side, the opportunity is immense.
I absolutely agree.
What are the things that excite you most about what it can do?
I can tell you what excites me with what it has done for me.
Okay, fair.
So I've used it extensively to help me find bits and parts of highlights of all my videos, right, and help me come up with ways to talk about the videos and
Sure.
Because you and I we belong in this ecosystem of people that we have so much content that we have from writing, from talking to people, interviewing with people, chatting with people. We need something to basically dump everything in there, synthesize, and create something interesting and useful alphabet. And that's what I've been doing. Like I've been training my own AI model. It's been a lot harder than I thought.
It is a lot harder.
It is very hard.
All these influencers who keep saying, "Oh, there's this new model, tuck, 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 finish 10 seconds." No, 10 hours at least. Yeah.
No, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I've been using Quen is my local AI model,
nice.
but it's getting it to actually be like me is really difficult. So I've been trying to learn and how to do it and how to improve it. I've been using it to basically look at everything I have and have like a central Theo knowledge base, if you will, right? That I can remember what I have said when and how, and under what context, so I can continue to improve on it. So those have been really exciting. What I do think it will be really interesting is if we can find a way to bring people together, to use these two to collaborate.
Yes, agreed.
I think the future would be amazing.
I agree. I, on the knowledge side of things, it's fascinating. You speak about training these models, right, and the expectations we have from these agents. It's a lot of training. It's a lot of effort. The main thing is it's rewarding. I mean, when they do it well. Not many people will say this, and this isn't paid by Microsoft for me to say this, but my current favorite is Copilot, the premium version. It's making my life finally so much easier with just being able to execute formatting, right? And for those of us who work on research reports, on presentation decks, changing things on these presentations can be very painful. And here you have this opportunity where write it down, it does it. Making things cleaner on an Excel sheet, getting the outputs, generating graphs, whatever you want. You don't have to try figuring out. And some of us are not great at these tools or as proficient, and that I think is a big powering thing, which I am fairly happy to pay my $25-30 a month because it's really making a change. On the other side, tools like Manus or Gemini Advanced or Pro that I'm using, there is a lot of effort that goes into. And it's not a matter of a few hours or a few days, or it goes into weeks and months where you're training it. And I feel it is the biggest element I feel like most people don't pay attention to is the treatment of these platforms as very intelligent, Leonardo da Vinci style, very, very smart person, right? Can do everything. But as I said, it's more like a chess prodigy. Can be very good at one thing, you got to be able to say, okay, that's what it's good at. But when you're training the others, it's very important. Treat it more like a young analyst or somebody who's just joined your company or an intern who needs to be handheld. You need to get them to ask you questions, get clarification, so you're training one by one, and give them a lot more, right? Give them instructions rather than saying, build me this deck with this, right? Give as much detail as possible, because then your output is more. But that's a lot about you learning that you need to do this, right? It's the management story where not everybody is born as a manager, not everybody can manage AI application, but you need to put in that effort. And hey, quite often the conversation is value for money, right?
Yeah.
And if you want that output, how much are you paying for it? 10, 20, 30 US dollars, and you wanted to give you all of this, which costs hundreds of dollars if you were having a person. Put in the effort if you want to save that, in my view.
Yeah. I love how you're describing it, because there's so much that we can learn and so much we can do with these tools. What I'm really intrigued about, and I'm hoping in the next few months we can get more insights on is the use of AI agents in super apps.
Yes.
So, you and I both know, super app, it has been tremendously useful in parts of the world, including, for example, Asia, where this is where it was born.
Correct.
Right?
WeChat.
And WeChat and Alipay. And recently I've heard about Abao.
Yes.
Being rolled out, deployed with Alipay apps.
Alipay, correct, yeah. Inside the apps, yeah.
With so many users, I am so intrigued to see what exactly will come out from this.
Look, this is, this very well, and the audience may not be as aware. The Chinese big tech firms are the most AI native firms that they exist, right? And they didn't talk about it for years. Alibaba's been using AI for like 90-95% of their stuff for like 7-8 years ago when I visited their office in Shanghai and stuff. You could see them talking about it, but it's like you have this whole nerve center which is all AI, and this is not Gen AI, this is more neural networks and other AI that they were deploying. Predictive AI for managing many of the answers. Ping An was using AI for real-time claim settlement, scans your damage on your vehicle, determines the damage, points you to the nearest service center, all in a matter of like a minute or two, which has been around, right? And they have such high resilience and serviceability that they never fail. You never hear of outages, not because the data of outages is restricted. You actually don't. You don't experience it. When Alibaba used to have their big Singles Day, right? It's massive. November. It's like and I haven't heard of any outages or slowdowns. All very smoothly managed. So long story short, I think I would say they probably already have a lot of stuff ready and working, and this is just going to take it to the next level. And super apps is one where the AIs can do magical stuff. The other place potentially, in my view, is going to be on the humanoid side. We don't talk too much robots, but we're reaching this phase where a companionship, right? So you're seeing two things happening simultaneously. One is the mechanics of it all with robots is amazingly improved over the last 3 years. Even Unitree last year versus this year, what their robots can do is fascinating. Boston Dynamics in the US, pretty strong as well. Unitree is a Shenzhen-based robotics company, probably one of the largest in the world. But now, combine that with Gen AI conversational ability, voila, right? You can have receptionists, which you already had, like virtual receptionists through screens. You can have a robot with. Now you have also many robots that are very real life or real person skin tones, etc. Doesn't make it awkward. I see the biggest benefits actually in elderly care, not just physically but also emotionally.
Yeah.
Right. There are guardrails. We talk about guardrails, which you've seen some unfortunate incidents where the conversational AIs have led to crimes being committed or young people harming themselves. But on the other side, as we move towards longevity, a lot of people living alone, these AIs can be the conversational companion.
Yeah.
And because they are watching all the time, there's that comfort for those who need it. Not that to replace human carers, but the number of human carers are going to be much lesser than the number of people who need the care. And I think that's a major piece where we don't pay as much attention to the mental side of, emotional side of growing older alone. And I feel that's going to be a big change. The third one is this recent one I was seeing, which was a mobile toilet. It comes to the person, and then they can sit on it, and you do your thing, and then it goes back to its pod, flushes itself, cleans itself up, and goes back into the toilet. So person doesn't have to really move. This is like the extreme case where someone's really hurt or really not able to go, and you don't want them to fall in the toilet, which is one of the biggest risks elderly have, is falling in toilets, right? And I felt maybe also if you have a companion, when the robot is watching you, you're more comfortable than when a human is watching you, and you're happier to let the robot watch you in the toilet. You can go pick up, lift, whatever. So I do feel the humanoids will be really interesting and fun in terms of caring and house help, etc. But a lot of this more from a companionship is going to be very interesting.
I like what you just said about companionship too, because back then when Amazon Alexa rolled
Yes.
out, one of the biggest use cases at that time were older adults at home,
Yeah.
and they would ask Alexa the same question over and
And
over
over
and
again.
over, and Alexa's always very patient and
Yes.
keep answering. So I can see that, absolutely.
For many others, right?
Yeah.
And then when it comes to other element, and again with the elderly and not so elderly, but maybe not the tech savvy. I mean, I've been there. Many of us have been there when we are helping our not so tech savvy friends or our parents. We have a bit of patience, but we run out of it very quickly. Come on, right? And there are people often are shy to ask you basic things about how to use it, but AI is non-judgmental
there.
largely, other than the earlier models of Grok and Microsoft that went berserk. But now they aren't judgmental. They just help out, friendly voice, tune it as you would, and they can do a step-by-step.
That's wild. Yeah.
And the other thing, and I'm really excited about this, is from a startup's perspective, right? Is the time from ideation to MVP is being shortened significantly. If you're building a fintech, previously you needed a data, you need wireframing, you need to build your app, you have a concept, but you need money before you can do much more, and then you show people how it looks and you get feedback, blah blah blah. Now with Lovable plus Replit and Cloud Code or whatever, that's a few hours to maybe a week. And as they say, visualizing is very important in any application. And when you do that, you have an idea. Hey, I want to, like you talk about, like integrate AI into whatever, but how does it look? Like I want to do a certain product. How will that look? Here it is, right? And so you just then at the end you need a plug-in to the code, and that also can be done fairly quickly at a cheaper price. So I do think it is going to be very helpful it will be an age of a lot of innovation and creativity, which which probably is again a new renaissance in some senses, where unfortunately there will be people who will not have jobs, or there will be students, young, very creative minded students who may not have jobs or may not be having any exciting jobs per se, and they will then put their creativity to use. Easy, try it out, burn, not good, move on, and that comes up with, you may start seeing some unique ideas that don't take so much to build, which then allow them to run for longer.
Yeah, and faster too, right?
Faster, yeah.
To actually be able to visualize how something looks like. So I do see that.
Okay. Now, in the near term, the next 6 months, what are you doing and what are you looking forward to?
Oh, in the next 6 months, I think it's going to be a really interesting rest of 2026. If there's one theme that we're constantly looking at is the future of AI empowered consumers, right?
Okay.
So what are they using the technology for, and what are SMBs using the technology for, and how do we respond as an ecosystem? How are we there, to support them, and how would banks need to position themselves to basically be and stay in part of their life cycle? So that's going to be a story I'm watching for quite a while.
It'd be interesting to get your thought on just building on that, right? When we talked about democratizing finance, but in terms of democratizing access, and maybe that's the other piece. Earlier, if you were a financial institution or even a large-scale Salesforce or whoever, a big SaaS company, being able to provide multiple seats or help out these small startups, right? Like, if I'm a small SME, Salesforce is not for me because it's too expensive, too clunky, whatever there is. But now with AI, what are your thoughts? Would that then be the unit economics works?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Possibly. And there are more ways. I've seen actually people creating their own tools.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of going out to look for tools out there, which every single one of these SMBs operate differently. And the most of it is they need tools that can save them time. Time is the one thing they can't buy.
Yeah.
And I see it from a personal experience, right? When I'm trying to do all of these things for companies I work with, I don't have time to do all the mundane stuff, the billing, the invoicing, making all of these paperwork thing done. I think that's a great part of, it frees up the time for people to focus on what's important.
And you could build your own native CRM using Excel and Word and whatever, and just keep it locally using an agent through Gemini itself.
Absolutely.
Just one spot.
Yeah.
Does your job. And I'm seeing some more of these AI agents are being targeted towards SME management, right? On the other side, the bank can now say, okay, here it is, here are some of your tools, use it, we're providing it for free, right? A bit like how research became democratized after MiFID II to a certain extent, where people are, okay, fine, just offer it for free because charging it is going to be painful.
Yeah.
And with the advent of the internet, it became pretty massive. Finally, I think we await to see how we now have had regulators globally, including in the major markets, move towards a situation where they've started licensing influencers, right? And full circle back to where we started off, it will be interesting on how you will see AI agents and AIs being licensed.
Cool. That will be interesting, because then it goes back to I think we're seeing a movement where a couple of months ago there was a lot of backlash around people using AI in their work, in their line of work. At first it was fun, like, here you create a cute little avatar with 3 hands, and then after a while, when people start using them to help them writing social posts or even writing a blog, people said, well, wait a minute, I'm going to feed your thing through AI detector. Whoa. And it became like, if the detector says you're using AI for your work, it becomes a bad thing.
Correct.
But I think we are slowly going to get to the point where I do think AI can be an amazing tool to help people who don't quite know how to express themselves, right? There's nothing wrong with using that to help you put your thoughts together.
Fair, yeah.
Especially for people whose first language is not English. I see a lot of these things being able to help people advance and bring their voice out. And so I think we will evolve to a point where the question is not so much so about, are you using AI to do your work? We're going to go back into focusing, what is the messaging? What are you trying to tell people? That matters more than the tool that you use.
On how you articulate it.
Yeah.
Agree. And the same thing with thought leaders. They often say, oh, they're using AI, or somebody's using AI and they can go. But honestly, it's always the same. I go back to my trading days where people say, somebody does mirror trading, it's replica, copy trading, whatever. Like the person who's copying the trade just knows the entry and the exit. They don't know how to handle the rest of it. It's a similar way, crudely so, with thought leadership, or people who understand when some ideas that people can articulate the same thing, but the moment you're asked, the depth of it falls off, right? The AI can only do the surface for you for the first time, and you put it out. Somebody comes and asks you the question. Do you have the answer? And if you don't have it, that's anyway going to fall apart, right? And we were talking about, the other element was about the approach to AI. You're talking about how there is, pushback in many cases in certain parts, but here in Asia, in particular, Greater China and even India, it's being embraced, right? You had this craze where you had clawbots being, or training was being offered by the telcos. Chinese telcos are offering people. AI tokens is now part of the offering. Right? It's unique where the government in the UAE is now aiming to make all of the citizens and residents AI educated, and 50% of the government to be largely run or operating using AI. And that's just a very different element. And how do you see, you're right at that bridge of being Asian, born and raised here, but lived most of your career in the US, and seeing that close and visiting often enough to know. How are you seeing this?
It's actually fascinating. I absolutely agree with you. There's a lot of pushback in not just the US, also in the UK, around the use of AI. People don't trust it.
Yeah.
They don't like it. They don't like it being used. They don't like it when people say you have to get trained because it is going to be part of your work, versus you see a complete 180 when you're in Asia. I think a large part of it comes to protection, right? When you feel like there will be mechanisms and safeguards in place to protect your job, you will be more open to it. When you are able to see the output, the positive outcome from using the technology, you will be more open to it. Just like what you were saying earlier, right? Alibaba and the likes have been using technology for a very long time in insurance, in lending, and personal wealth management, a lot of those. So you're used to it. You see it works and you gain from it.
Correct.
Right? Versus when you're, let's say, in the US, where constantly every day we've been being bombarded by news of companies doing massive layoffs, not hundreds, but thousands, tens of thousands, then your question will be, well, why do I want to embrace something that I know eventually I'm going to lose my job over? I don't have any consumer protection. And if I lose my job, then all of these, for example, social care, healthcare, all of that are gone, right? So the impact of it is much larger. So I mean, I can see that.
It's almost that stage of pushback when we talk about autonomous vehicles, and a lot of say truck drivers or others are pushing back, because if they lost that, they didn't have any other thing to necessarily rely on. That brings in the social elements of it. And when I was thinking about it, the other piece was, when we're speaking about agents and moving forward, is going to be IDs, right? Agent IDs. And in mainland, in Chinese mainland, they are now talking about looking at IDs for all agents, which then starts getting fascinating on execution, liability, and I think that could be one of the ways to answer, because you kind of know who owns that agent, and it doesn't have an ID, it can't get in, and it's all can be done in a matter of seconds in terms of enabling or giving somebody an agentic ID, almost like an API ID, if you think of it. It's just a matter of scaling it.
But if you think about, from a question of identity, I think we're a little bit behind in the US in terms of, everything digital, and, we're getting there.
Yeah, that's going to be very fascinating. Theo, this is, as always, been a great conversation, and we've been speaking on different things for the last 3 hours, and maybe we can continue doing that. But thank you so much again for coming on the Token Bytes podcast, and I look forward to having you back again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Audience, keep following us for more such insights, conversations around financial services, fintech, artificial intelligence, and tokenization. Click like, follow us, and subscribe.